Hello everyone, welcome to the program. This is Sunday Politics, live on Channels Television. I'm Sean Wakimale, live for you here in Abuja. Well, let's tell you first, before I get into what has become a major back and forth and a war of words between opposition political parties and the ruling APC about the 2027 election. There is a verdict and there is a declaration from opposition political parties, which is now popularly known as the Ibadan Declaration. I'll be telling you more about that and getting insight on what the decision the opposition political parties have made ahead of 2027. The heat is on, everyone. But before we get into it, let me tell you about the politics of Lagos State, particularly about the internal workings of the APC. Today we saw the Chief of Staff to President Bola Tinubu, Mr. Femi Gbajabiamila, who has made his intention known of whom he preferred as the candidate of the party for the Lagos State governorship election. He declared his support for the Lagos governorship lead of the State Deputy Governor, Dr. Obafemi Hamzat. Honorable Gbajabiamila endorsed Hamzat when the Deputy Governor, in company of some prominent party leaders in the state, like former Minister of Defense Obanikoro, visited him at his Oniru residence earlier today. The visit was part of the ongoing engagements and consultations with party leaders ahead of the 2027 critical elections in one of Nigeria's most intense and highly volatile political terrain most of the time. Let me allow you to listen to the Chief of Staff to President Bola Tinubu, Honorable Femi Gbajabiamila.
Before he got to where he is now, there's a process that started, and it's that process that brought him here. Two things. I'm a party loyalist to the core. Secondly, he's somebody I know well, and I know his capacity. I've known him for years, so why would he not have my support? So yes, he has my support, and I'm sure he will have the support of practically every APC member. Hopefully, I believe there will be a consensus. And that's what the Electoral Act talks about. It's either we have direct primaries or we have consensus. This is the build-up to the consensus. And it's moving steadily. It's moving very fast. And I believe we'll get there. If we don't get there, we'll go to the primaries as the law dictates. And either way, this process that has started, we believe we will finish it, and we'll finish well and strong.
Honorable Femi Gbajabiamila, former Speaker of the House of Representatives and the Chief of Staff to President Bola Tinubu. And let's focus on perhaps your biggest story in the land as of this weekend. And that's about the Ibadan Declaration. That is what is now being called Nigeria's political landscape is surely tilting towards 2027 elections, and the battle lines are becoming clearer. A coalition of major opposition figures, they met in Ibadan, the capital of Oyo State, and they've declared their intention to field a single presidential candidate to challenge President Bola Tinubu of the APC, warning of what it described as a creeping drift toward a one-party state. The communique after the event goes further, questioning the neutrality of the electoral umpire, calling for sweeping electoral reforms and urging Nigerians to rally behind a unified front. The political leaders from the opposition, different political parties, have resolved to present a united front in the 2027 general elections, agreeing to field a single presidential candidate to challenge President Bola Tinubu of the ruling All Progressives Congress APC. The decision was one of the major highlights of the National Summit of Opposition Political Leaders held yesterday in Ibadan, where participants gathered to fashion a way out of the current challenges facing the country. But the ruling APC is pushing back hard. The party has dismissed the opposition's claims as alarmist, insisting Nigeria's democratic space remains open and competitive, while also raising serious concerns about rhetoric it says could inflame tensions, particularly references to historical violent political episode. So is this the beginning of a formidable opposition coalition, or a familiar script that may struggle under the weight of ambition and ideology? And how prepared is the ruling party for what could be its toughest electoral test yet? First and foremost, let's hear and listen to some of the leaders who spoke after the communique was read and the agreement they had. Let me allow you to listen to, first and foremost, the governor of Oyo State, whom statement is generating a lot of reactions from the ruling APC. And this is the governor of Oyo State, Seyi Makinde.
Discussion is happening here in Ibadan. It's not by accident. Ibadan has always served as the political capital of the Southwest and indeed Nigeria. Let me also be clear about what this meeting is not. It is not a gang-up against one man. And it is not about individual ambition to be president. It is about the collective ambition of the Nigerian people to have a democracy that is properly defined.
Governor Seyi Makinde, there is a portion of Governor Seyi Makinde's statement that I would like you to listen to, because that's exactly what the APC is really not happy about. But on the podium also is the chairman of the ADC and the former Senate President, Senator David Mark.
This government has launched major attacks on the opposition parties, all in a bid to deny the people the right to choose.
Senator David Mark, after all said and done, there was a communique that was read out, and it was by Mr. Tanimo Turuki, Senior Advocate of Nigeria.
And fight for the survival of multi-party democracy in Nigeria. 2, that despite the onslaughts and machinations of the ruling party, the NPC, to ensure that President Bola Tinubu emerges as the sole presidential candidate in 2027, we shall field candidates and contest the 2027 presidential and other elections. 3, that we shall work towards fielding one presidential candidate for the 2027 election. We shall be agreed and supported by all participating opposition parties to rescue our nation and our long-suffering masses. 4, that INEC Chairman, Professor John Shojo Amopita, having shown bias and open partisanship in favor of the ruling APC, should not conduct the 2027 general election, as Nigerians across board have lost confidence in him and his capacity to guarantee the required neutrality to deliver a free, fair, transparent and credible election. His continued stay in office is vexatious and capable of triggering widespread crisis in our nation.
All right, that's the communique and the agreement made by the opposition political parties there yesterday in Ibadan, now called the Ibadan Declaration. Let's now get to hear directly from the ruling APC, the spokesperson of the party. Mr. Felix Moka is live for us from Delta State. Thank you so much, Mr. Moka, for your time tonight. I appreciate it.
Thank you for inviting me.
Yeah. The opposition has yet again come for your party, and the statement by the opposition party doesn't portray and make your party look well at all. It does look like the opposition think that Your party is working from answers to the question as far as this election is concerned. Your party looks culpable as far as the allegations are concerned. How do you react to these officially?
Well, there was nothing new that happened in Ibadan yesterday. Nothing new at all. It was simply a rehash of all of the really reckless, baseless, and unfounded allegations against the APC. Now, you see, look, when they huddled together in that hall, you would think that they would spend time to talk about themselves and the plan that they had for Nigeria and for Nigerians. But yet again, just like they did with the ADC National Convention, the so-called convention, it was a discussion about the APC. They continue to obsess about the APC. Look, whether they come together, whether they field, one candidate by all of the opposition parties put together, quite frankly, it's none of our business. They can do that. When the election is called, we will, and as we plan, to participate vigorously to contest that election. They should prepare. Now, the idea of, really, throwing this around and making it look like the APC did anything to these parties, we didn't. As I referenced in my statement earlier today, the PDP today is in crisis because a member of this so-called coalition, Atiku Abubakar, confiscated that party's presidential ticket in 2023. And then as soon as he did that in total violation of that party's constitutionally enshrined rotational principle. Now, when the party began to have crisis, rather than sit there and fix the problem, he bolted to the ADC. Now, Peter Obi of the Labour Party was the candidate in 2023. The same thing. Peter Obi is perpetually shopping for a party where he can clinch, tickets uncontested. He does not want to build a party. He cannot build a party. He's not interested in building a party. His is to simply search around, snatch a ticket to run the presidential election. The ABC itself was a victim of the hijack by these same people of the leadership of that party, without reference, without recourse to their constitution, without reference to the rule of law, without reference to, just sheer decorum, to even consult effectively with those who were in leadership in that party prior. So, you see, there's nothing that happened in Ibadan that concerns us. Now, I didn't focus on all of this conversation. My interest was the really despicable threat to violence issued by the governor of Oyo State, Seyi Makinde. That was the focus of our, commentary today. Because whatever else they said, they had a right to say what they want. But no one, however highly placed, has a right to threaten the corporate existence of Nigeria by conjuring up, an episode in our history that is truly the darkest of it all. A period that Nigeria bled, our people bled. People were burnt alive. There was nothing romantic about that event, the Operation Wet here. So for a sitting governor who constitutionally is actually the chief security officer of Oyo State to bandy around this threat, that is really disgraceful. I think Governor Makinde should be ashamed of himself, quite frankly, because it's wrong for him to do that. People in leadership bear exceptional responsibility to speak with restraint and with decorum and with, some sensibility. You don't sit there as governor, you wield enormous authority, and you incite people who are beneath you, to violence. That is not democratic. That is completely anti-democratic. And I think that, I hope the security agencies are listening to Governor Makinde and to take that threat seriously. Because, Governor Makinde himself was born in 1967. He was not born in 1965 when Operation Wet Year decimated lives and changed the trajectory of our politics in the Southwest. He was not born. So I want to assume that he had no idea and has no idea, probably has not even read up that history, to understand the enormity of this, threat that he issued yesterday. You know what? Personally, as a citizen of Nigeria, I'm utterly disappointed in the governor of Oyo State.
So let me ask you. if the APC, as you have put out, has described Governor Makinde's Operation White Tear reference as dangerous, and you say you're disappointed, isn't there a risk here that the opposition is trying to amplify and for your party to take note of, because they are warning of an impending danger of some of your action and political push for our nation, rather than diffusing that which could have become a bigger political tension in our country today?
Sure, I'm not quite sure I understand what you're referring to. If you're referring to this, again, this specter or allegation of one-party state, sure, we've had this conversation over and over again. That is without basis. I mean, I can't say it enough. On what basis do, the entire opposition or Governor Makinde himself allege that the APC is somewhat orchestrating the emergence of a one-party state? How is that done? You and I know that the one-party state is not something you throw around. This is, a legal and constitutional construct. To take a multi-party system like we have in Nigeria and turn it into a one-party state, it's not done casually. The process of constitutional amendment is not one that is easy to accomplish in a democracy. You don't do that. You see, but if the allegation is based on the fact that, the APC has been the destination of choice for political actors who are decamping, leaving their terribly run parties, their parties that are in intractable crisis, to come into our party, and that we have about 31 governors today who are members of our party, if that is the reason for all of this, nonsense, then quite frankly, there's no case to be made by these, characters. Because,
just to jump in, and we've had this conversation about what your party has described as a rhetoric in the sense that you are asking for evidence. You are saying that there are no hard facts to what the opposition is referencing. But there are those who say there seems to be some element of subterfuge, some element of using other factors to push for everyone or all the major opposition figures to come into one basket, and that they're referencing that is dangerous for our democracy. But they also are making reference to those who are directly or indirectly linked to your party, who are being used or they are figuring as the leader of the opposition to the opposition parties in court, using the institution of the judiciary to decimate these political parties. For example, a direct reference has been made to what Mr. Femi Gbajabiamila said at a social event where he was advising an honorable to say the opposition should be decimated, should they go after them, take over the party. And even the president has been referred to in some of his statements to the extent to the president say, well, if the opposition party wants to fail, that he's happy that he fails. Well, naturally one would think that the failure of your opposition should be your own joy. But then at the end of the day, it's a failure of our democracy, don't you think, Mr. Moka?
No, Sheon, please. This is not, look, this moment, has played in our national life. Under President Obasanjo, Sheon, you will recall that the PDP, the People's Democratic Party, governed this country with 30 governors. And President Obasanjo was on record many times where he asked the question, say, look, in my party, referring to the PDP, we have 30 governors who have joined the party, who are members of the party. How do you expect us to lose, national election? He asked. He said that with audacity. He asked that question, and these characters today, the likes of Atiku Abubakar, were members of that party. Atiku Abubakar was not on record objecting to the PDP, bringing in all of these elements to the degree of 30 governors and almost, a total grip on the parliament. The specter of one-party state did not play at that time. Why? What is different now? You see, this conversation is difficult because, I'm not sure the allusion to APC using subterfuge to, discombobulate the opposition. We're not doing that. Just to be clear, we're not. And, your reference to what the chief of staff to the president said at that, informal event, let me ask a question to respond to that. In response to that, Cheon, are you telling me today that if David Mark or Peter Obi or Atiku Abubakar heard that the APC was imploding, that there was some civil war erupting in the APC, Cheon, you're telling me that Atiku Abubakar, whether in private or in public, will not exercise or express some satisfaction? With Atiku Abubakar, simply just say, "Oh no, that's terrible. APC, please heal. APC, please don't implode." Is that what you expect? This is competitive politics. It's the reason it's called multiple democracy. It's about competing alternatives. When a party like the PDP, like the ADC, like the Labour Party, becomes unable to govern themselves, you don't put that or cast that aspersion on the ruling party. There's no basis for that. And the fact that somebody says, okay, well, if they're imploding, let them implode, that does not mean or ascribe responsibility to the ruling party for being the architect of that crisis. Look, what are we talking about? The ADC's legal trauma recently. How did APC feature? This was a suit brought by an APC stalwart who felt cheated by these parachuting hijackers, the Atiku Abubakars and the Fitobis, who took over a party that they had no idea where the party came from. They took over it with ignominy, treated those who were there with disdain, with utter disrespect, and they spoke out in line with their constitutional freedom to also go to court. They went to court, and the ADC bungled their legal case. Didn't get leave of court to appeal, actually have no basis to appeal, but they appealed. That legal, mishap, how is that the responsibility of the APC, Shehu? You see, look, let's quit this, conversation.
Mr.
Because they know what they're doing.
Let's put a perspective to this, and maybe because history lessons are also very, very good. And I'll put it in a perspective. There is a coup of January 15, 1966, and there's an election of 1965. These crises between the action group is in, and it was a Western region crisis, political crisis. And the late Obafemi Awolowo, the premier, and the leaders of the party in the Western region. The crisis between them caused a major violence in the country. A word here is a Yoruba word that wet it, and which turned out to be what they call the Wild West. And it was a situation where politicians' houses and properties were being burned. And it really was a down moment in the history of Western region that make up part of the Southwest and some other parts of Nigeria today. And if the opposition is warning that, what led to that was politics. Politics of anger, politics of feud, politics of discontent about the state and the running of political parties, which led to the election of 1965 and the reason why the military came in 1966. And they are warning to say, look, politicians should be careful about some of these rhetorics and some of these narratives that could lead into political tension in the land and that could bring some kind of illegitimacy to the process of our electioneering. Is it a moment of reflection? Let's even assume that the opposition is wrong in their narrative or in their argument. But is it a moment of reflection that the government of the APC is in power and the opposition is raising this kind of caution? Is your party for a moment thinking about the nation and this narrative that could cause some kind of violence in Nigeria? And how are you working to ensure that this does not happen? Let's even assume that they are dreaming. Let's forbid that this ever happens. Are you working towards to ensure that our nation does not get into the Wild West that we saw in the political crisis of 1962 and 1966, which led to the coup?
Shehu, thank you so much for this question and the way you framed it. Now, you framed it as an assumption that we should assume that all of this talk actually are unjustified and unfounded. Yes, we can make that assumption because, in fact, it's not just an assumption. That is the reality. But, however, yes, there's no political party, especially a ruling party, that would, I think, trifle with the prospect of, anarchy in the country. And certainly, Mr. President is not the one. He's far too experienced and too committed to the cause of democracy. And probably, amongst all of those who are in the corridor of presidential, contestation, he is by far the most, committed Democrat. So for him, democracy means a whole lot. He's given a lot of himself to not just propagate democracy, but to defend democracy in our country. Therefore, he is not the one to sit back and, allow, anything that is controllable to, create, exacerbate the tension that we refer to. However, the president, even as president of the Federal Republic, has no control over the actions or the commentary or the rhetoric of the opposition. There's no way for him to do that, because doing so will actually be, anti-democratic. For anyone in the APC to, attempt, as I offered, as, jokingly previously, but today I said, look, if anyone is waiting for the APC to join in helping to manage the opposition parties so that they can calm down and be more focused on their own internal affairs and, shore up their internal democracy and, build their own capacity to manage their affairs and prepare and focus on the elections, we are not going to offer that consulting services to the opposition parties. We cannot, because that is, not consistent with democratic practice. So, what I'm saying, beyond minding our business and actually conducting ourselves as we have done, we have followed protocol, every rule, even when, we take action that the court suggests may be, wrong on our part. We trace and we recalibrate. I'll give you the example of, our Congress in Ondo State, where we finished Congress, only to learn that a court order had been issued in the course of the day. We could have said, look, we're done before this order was set on us. We didn't do that, Shehu. We, immediately summoned an emergency meeting, had that conversation at the NWC, and decided to, completely cancel that Congress. And then went back to, negotiate and, reconcile the people who were, having this conflict, and then call for a fresh Congress. Now, if the ruling party that we are can in fact do that in this dispensation, in this build up to the election, not taking anything for granted, not taking the court for granted, why will the ABC not take a court order seriously? When the court says maintain status quo ante bellum, why would the ABC not take that seriously? You see, that is where the question belongs. A lot of the question that is framed for the ruling party, actually properly belongs in the realm of the opposition parties. They are the ones who have to answer, because they are the ones who are, really, elevating these issues to national, conflict. They are the ones who are issuing threats of violence, not the APC. We've done no such thing. So, I think that this conversation should be directed to the opposition more than
Mr. Moka. I mean, for someone who has experienced opposition party, when President Bola Tinubu, for example, was the leader of the opposition, you know the kind of manner in which it took on the Obasanjo government at the time. And he was a fierce man, bold, courageous, audacious. He fought fiscal federalism. He was one who led that movement in the Southwest. And we saw how AD transformed into AC to ACN, and they came to form the APC. And I remember vividly how President Bola Tinubu was criticized at a governorship election in Ekiti State, when at the campaign he said, rig and roast. And, the party at the time was explaining what he meant by rig and roast. And I remember Governor Fayemi was saying, oh, he didn't literally mean that. He meant that elections should be fair. And I don't see in opposition who say, if the president at the time had told Jonathan that this election is rig and roast, why are you worried that the opposition is also saying, do not rig this election, do not turn our democracy upside down? By the way, Mr. Moka, when you reference Obasanjo era of 30 governors, they were elected governors. They were not defectors to another political party. I mean, is it a case of karma, isn't it?
No, please. See, don't even attempt, my dear friend, to draw a distinction between governors who are elected and those who choose to defect. What they have in common, and why you can't differentiate, is the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. It is the Constitution that gives authority to, conduct and participate in elections, in exercise of your freedom of association. It is that same freedom of association that underpins the decision by any Nigerian to join the APC. So there's no distinction to be made whether a governor joins the APC, in exercise of that freedom of association, or joins or gets elected again, in exercise of that freedom of association by belonging to a political party, it is one and the same. There's no difference to be made. Unless you want to begin to cherry pick, what aspect of the Constitution is superior to the other, and I won't do that. I'm a lawyer. The Constitution is to be read and understood holistically. So let's rest that, argument. Point is that today we have 31 governors. Back then, the PDP had 30 governors. And so it doesn't lie in the mouth of anyone. And by the way, the issues you raise about, Bola Tinubu, the president now, and, the leader of the, ACN at the time, and President Obasanjo, you see, the difference is that, nobody accused the former president Obasanjo of being the, mischief maker in whatever it was that the opposition at that time had to deal with. Nobody said it was the PDP that caused it. Nobody, I was a member of that tradition. And so I don't remember anybody really putting the blame at the doorstep of, every time we had problems and issues, we took ownership and we dealt with it. So, you see, why is this so hard for a man who served as the vice president of the Federal Republic? And all of these people who have served as governors, as ministers, as Senate, presidents, and whatever else there is. Why is it so difficult for any one of them to come on your show and say, Shehu, listen, Nigerians, look, on this issue of our internal crisis, we take responsibility. Shehu, they have not taken any responsibility of any aspect, however minuscule, of the crisis that is internal and endemic in a party. All they do is blame the APC. How is that even possible? That they have no responsibility for all the crisis going on.
Zamoka,
if
just
you think
quickly,
that is true, then of course that's okay.
Yeah, let me quickly, because of our time. The opposition seems to be very ready, and they are all coming together in one basket, saying we're coming for Bola Tinubu and the APC, and we're coming hard. They're forming one voice, and they say for the very first time we're seeing opposition come like that to say we're going to field one candle. We're going to come under one ticket. And they're saying that, be worried, we will come. Is the APC in trouble? Because when you have forced all of them into one basket, they're now coming for you in unity. That should scare you, isn't it? And they're saying, look, Professor Joash Amupiton should not conduct this election. And they're standing firm on that. It doesn't bother you at all. And they've also called President Bola Tinubu a one-time president. What is that narrative? Is it making you jittery already?
What's cost-free? As long as you have God's given breath, you can say whatever you like. And the fact that you can say whatever you like should not result in anybody losing sleep. All of those things are just sound, with no fury to it. Because the people who are saying these things, as I said in my statement, are people whose eternal ambition, their eternal commitment to the pursuit of the presidential crown is utterly irreconcilable. Even if they did reconcile that, even if there was some way for them to reconcile that, the APC is unperturbed. We have no reason to be perturbed. Because, these guys have been in this country. Every election we've had, from the FCT election to all of the constituency election, they were no show together. They made no impact at all. Their footprint was nowhere to be seen. And the people who voted in those elections were Nigerians, who, again, will vote in 2027. We were not afraid in the FCT election. In all of the constituency elections, we won hands down. So why would we be afraid? We have no reason to be afraid. We're fine. We're doing our job, and we're ready. Even
Stick around with me.
We're ready to do that.
Stick around with me. There will be some response. If you like, if you want to, you will be able to respond. But stick around if you like. But still ahead, the opposition is firing back at the APC over the Ibadan summit. Is a plan for a single 2027 candidate a real game changer or political rhetoric? We speak to the ADC chieftain Ladan Salihu, and they have a very big response to Mr. Felix Smoker. Stay with us, everyone. We'll be right back.
Coleman wires and cable. Great quality. Now with the new look.
Artificial intelligence will not reward casual experimentation. It will reward leaders who unite judgment, trusted data, and responsible governance. Many organizations face weak AI adoption, fragmented data, cyber risk, and blurred accountability. The competence required to succeed now is disciplined judgment, data stewardship, and AI governance. Moving forward means AI sharpening decision, accelerating value, and preserving trust. Join TechSem at the Wheat Baker, Ikoyi, Lagos on the 29th and 30th of April 2026 with Professor Roger Lalin, former Oracle Asia Pacific CEO, Harvard visiting professor, and ATM chief pioneer for further insights. Cost is 4 million naira. For more information, contact the number on your screen or send a mail to the email on your screen.
Improve infrastructure connectivity and innovative ideas that move our people from poverty to prosperity.
From the north to the south, across valleys, rivers, and rising skylines, one name powers it all. Secure, intelligent, and built to last. Nigeria's digital transformation is unfolding before our eyes. We connect governments, empower agencies, and enable service delivery in the private sector, all driven by brilliant minds and bold ideas. Across public and private sectors, governance to learning, e-health to emergency response, we are integrating the systems that drive our progress as a nation. Keep evolving every day, every night, because Nigeria's digital future begins today. Galaxy Backbone, enabling digital services.
This is a new understanding. Citizens play their part. Government delivers on its promises. Tax is no longer just about compliance. It's the new partnership for a greater Nigeria. The new Nigeria Revenue Service stands not as a tax collector, but as a trusted custodian of what we built together. It's a new deal for a better Nigeria. A greater Nigeria, built by us, funded by us. Message brought to you by Nigeria Revenue Service, NRS.
Thanks so much, everyone. Welcome back to the program. The War of Words over the Ibadan Opposition Summit, now called the Ibadan Declaration, is intensifying after the APC dismissed the gathering as alarmist and one it called inciting rhetoric. Opposition figures are now pushing back, defending their call for a united front ahead of 2027 and insisting their concerns about democracy, electoral integrity, and governance are legitimate. In the heart of the debate is a bold proposal to field a single presidential candidate to challenge the ruling party, a move the opposition says is necessary to rescue the country, but one the APC argues is driven more by ambition than ideology. You heard my guest earlier, Mr. Felix Moka, who is the spokesperson of the ruling APC, who is still live with us on the program. But let's bring in a member and the chieftain of the African Democratic Congress, ADC, Malam Laden Saliu, is live for us here, and he was a participant at the Ibadan Summit. Mr. Saliu, it's a pleasure having you tonight. Join us.
Good to see you, Joe.
Why are you and your colleagues in the ADC alarming the nation? The opposition is now seen as just a rhetoric bearer rather than realists.
Well, first of all, let me say this. I watched the conversation you just had with my good friend, Mr. Felix Moka. I am scandalized and embarrassed at the audacity of, arrogance, simply because you are a spokesperson of a ruling party and probably the government. He is totally oblivious of the trajectory of politics in the country. The conversation before Ibadan declaration was that the opposition parties were disintegrated, they are operating in circles, they are not together, and they do not seem to provide one solid mass of political opposition that will checkmate the APC-led government. And we came up with a bold answer that seemed to, and indeed has rattled the APC and the government of President Bola Ahmed Tinubu. They are undergoing an emotional, inner emotional struggle with their conscience to come to terms with the reality of what happened and what obtained in Ibadan yesterday. And they decided to pick on Seyi Makinde, the governor, whom Mr. Moka can confirm that when even they were trying to organize a convention in Ibadan, the government closed down the airport. All the delegates had to go through Lagos, and a lot of them went by road on the pretext that they were undertaking repairs. An airport that Seyi Makinde literally built. And then after the whole convention, 48 hours later, that airport was open. Now, let's come back to the issues of the moment. And the issues are that we are...
and I like some clarity. Because these are built-up issues. And they're building up gradually. And they are creating some kind of narrative. If you are inferring that the government of the day is muscling, using the power of the state and the instrumentality of governance to muscle opposition, that is a dangerous rhetoric.
Absolutely.
Is that what they are doing?
That is what they are doing,
I mean, if you're inferring that they intentionally shut down the airport.
Oh, they did.
Just so that opposition cannot have a movement, because it's a constitutional duty of anyone to move around the country. It's enshrined in the country. And if you are inferring that, you are making an allegation about this government to use system of governance against for political upper hand.
Well, let me take you back not only for the Ibadan issue. It happened right here in the Federal Capital Territory.
I'm trying to let you lay a solid evidence to your allegations.
Look, go check the records when the PDP had their convention in Ibadan, whether that airport was closed or it was operational, and then we'll have a conversation. I tell you that on the excuse of repairs and, undertaking repairs, that airport was rendered unserviceable, and so aircraft could not land.
So is this a general feeling within the opposition circle that there seems to be a muscling of the opposition?
Of course, without any iota of doubt, without any shred of doubt, the attitude of this government, the attitude of the APC, the attitude of their minders, the attitude of their apologists is to make sure that they make the opposition go through obstacle courses, one after the other. After what we saw in Ibadan, not yesterday, the one I talked about, ditto, what happened in Abuja here when we had our convention. We were denied access to the Eagle Square, and they went through third parties to major hotels to take over, the choice conference centers. We found a place in the city nonetheless. We shut down, guess where? Bola Ahmed Tinubu Way, right in his face. And we had a convention. Now, after that, we followed up with this Ibadan meeting, which they didn't see it coming, because we deliberately refused to make it public. We went on with our activities so that the same drums of, obstacles that they had placed on our way will not be met to, make the Ibadan conference,
So
but even at
how
that...
would you describe the Ibadan summit?
Hugely.
You think that rattles the government?
Oh, hugely successful.
The APC?
They can wear a face, my brother, but they are not only rattled, they are emotionally dismembered, because, like I said, they didn't see it coming. Because we came up with solid communique that defines,
would you say that is injurious to the ego and to the capability or abilities of the APC to win this election? Is there anything that you think that could dent their chances?
Oh, the people of Nigeria, when it comes to, credible elections and elections that are based on integrity, this government will fail the integrity and the credibility test at the polls. This government will not measure up with the anger and the frustrations of the Nigerian people.
What part of that summit in Ibadan do you think is injurious to the APC?
The parts that are injurious to the APC, first of all, is the clarion call that we've made for INEC and Amopiton. As they are today, Amopiton should resign or should be removed, because in public service today, Amopiton to me is the #1 persona non grata, because he has failed the integrity test, he has failed the competency test, he has failed, he has not presented himself as that impartial, credible umpire that can give Nigeria, a nation of 250 million people, an election to celebrate. Because by his actions and his utterances and the way he conducts government business, he scandalizes every person that has, an integrity in Nigeria. So,
when you say that Amopiton should be removed, should be changed, how would that happen? Because to my mind, there are two ways that you can remove him. The president making that decision. Secondly, the National Assembly making a ratification on the floor in removing Professor Amopiton. But the Senate president has said he's done nothing wrong.
Well, I mean, that's to be expected. Look, we are, unfortunately, in a nation where you have a government and a party whose preoccupation is state capture. There's nothing in the National Assembly to be proud of. What is there to be proud of in the National Assembly that when the Senate president speaks, he speaks to you, he speaks to me in a believable manner? There's not a single item that has been sent to the National Assembly by the president that has not been rubber stamped by the National Assembly. They just approved $560 million loan. Look, this as we speak, we have $30 billion debt hanging on our necks on top of fuel subsidy removal and the revenues accruing thereof, on top of the taxes that have been visited on the people, cruel and internally killing as they are. Where are these funds? We do not see them translate into the upliftment of the living conditions of the average Nigerians. We graduate from poverty to penury by the day.
On the point of wanting Amopiton to go, if he doesn't go and conduct this election,
we will escalate our own campaign for Amopiton to go.
What if
because
he doesn't go?
Is a clear and present danger to
Is opposition saying that if Amopiton is ANEC chairman, he will not be part of the election, or what?
The election is our own constitutional responsibility as, the leading opposition movement. When we get to that stage, we will make a decision about it. But as we speak today, we insist that Amopiton, by his actions, he has lost confidence of not only the opposition, but the ordinary Nigerian who believes that this country should
We'll take another break, and I would like maybe a few minutes of Mr. Moka, because since we have an opportunity to have both of you on the program, there are points of divergence. I'm not sure there are any points of convergence in both of your arguments. But do you think that Governor Makinde made an error in his statement?
Governor Makinde was 100% correct, was 110% very correct.
And you are doubling down on that? Is there any imminent danger?
There's no imminent danger.
Comparable to 1965, 1966 incidents of Operation White here.
Sean, when you
know what it culminated
into? White here. It culminated
into a major violence in our country.
Violence in our country, and the conflagration and the resultant snowballing of the conflict to up to the end of the civil war.
Are we at that kind of stage?
Look, we
is
are
our
not
country
saying
that threatened to that extent?
You see, I want to advise my good friend, Mr. Moka, to go and enlist, he's a barrister, to go and enlist into a school of contemporary history on politics and governance, and maybe in even media management. We cannot be talking to Nigerians in such a condescending manner. What Governor Makinde just did was to drop a warning. Because when you take the historical perspective of Operation Wetier, and you contextualize it with what is happening today, there are salient signs, there are danger signals that will make you want to pray and hope that we are not on that, we are on the amber light, we are not approaching the danger signals. And what he is saying, in essence, is to make sure, for the government, the APC, the government, and for President Bola Ahmed Tinubu to sober up, to reflect on the future of Nigeria, on the issues that we have on ground that are now heating up. Insecurity, terrible economy, misgovernance, and what have you. And that if we do not take care of these problems, we are likely to fall into... He is just giving a kind of wake-up call. And then, minders will will go all over the place. And let me say one last thing. When the 2023 elections were held, we had 23 governors from, that APC won. They had to poach and, intimidate, harass, coerce, and get other governors. Now they are 31, and they are still afraid. They have 31 governors, they have the control of the Senate and the House, but they don't have the control of the people. So they are literally afraid and scared to not.
Give me a moment. But in your mind, I'm imagining that you're thinking that the APC might lose the 2027 election.
Oh, they will. They will.
I would like to know how that will happen. But that's going to be after this break, everyone. Join us again.
TerraQ, now available in crayfish. TerraQ, unwrap joy, unleash taste.
This is a new understanding. Citizens play their part. Government delivers on its promises. Tax is no longer just about compliance. It's the new partnership for a greater Nigeria. The new Nigeria Revenue Service stands not as a tax collector, but as a trusted custodian of what we built together. It's a new deal for a better Nigeria. A greater Nigeria, built by us, funded by us. Message brought to you by Nigeria Revenue Service, NRS.
And cable, great quality, now with the new look.
Our closing moment now on the Ibadan Declaration. My guests tonight, Madam Ladon Saliu, a member of the ADC, and Mr. Felix Moka, the spokesperson of the APC. Thanks so much, gentlemen. for your time. You said that the APC will lose this election. They say they are not jittery about what happened in Ibadan. But let me allow Mr. Moka just to give a response to what you've said, just in about 60 seconds. Mr. Moka, there are inferences to the fact that your party should prepare to pack out of the villa and get out of the control of the center. You worry that this warning is something that you should be worried about?
Sure. Again, I mean, my dear friend said a lot of things, but actually said nothing in particular. Just making these claims changes nothing, doesn't change the calculation, doesn't change the possibilities and the prospects for the APC. If only, my dear friend Ladan and his colleagues would worry about the ADC and all of the opposition parties, they'd be better off. I've never heard my friend really come on air to articulate any vision, alternative vision of development for Nigeria, or to articulate any policies in any area of our national life as an offering by the ADC. I want to be entertained one day by that discussion. But every time I see my friend, it's about, what the APC did or didn't do. That's not how to win an election, my friend. So, you can...
Some of the ADC members who are saying that they would love to debate you. For example, I would love to even hear someone like Kola Ologbode who will say that your party has done little or nothing. Because the question will be, if the opposition says your party cannot win the next election, because according to the opposition, that your party has failed Nigerians, what would you be telling them and Nigerians tonight?
Look, listen, Shehu, I can't wait for you to put up that program to bring me and Kola or anybody else, even my friend Ladan, to have this conversation. I'll give you a rain check on that. If you ever have the moment to bring us together to have this conversation in an expanded, forum, Shehu, please do that. Do that tomorrow, and I'll be there. But, again, look, the closest referendum we've had on the APC recently was the FCT election. Was the by-elections. That's the closest. All of these conversations, Nigerians, think this or don't think that. Look, they're neither here nor there. We are not concerned about that. We're concerned about what the electorate, what they do on election day. And so far, since 2023, the APC has won every single election conducted in this country. So I don't know the basis on which Ladan or Kola or anybody else may suggest that APC should be concerned about the next election. We're not concerned at all.
What will be your final word tonight? How do you hope to win the election? APC seems very confident. If you think they are cocky and arrogant about it, it does look like the confidence is even higher than you imagine. They think there is no sight, there is no light at the end of the tunnel for the ADC or the coalition to win this election.
The people are speaking. Look, ADC is just... it's more than a political party. It's a movement that aggregates, Nigerians in opposition. But beyond that, that speaks for the people. And the people of Nigeria, irrespective of what Mr. Moka and his own, co-minders will say, are tired of a government that is, every day failing in its own responsibility, are not happy with the way and manner in which they have destroyed the PDP, they have decapitated the NNPP, they have muzzled the Labour parties, and they are now beaming their searchlight on the ADC. They will fail, and Nigerians will succeed through the ADC come 2023. It doesn't matter what Mr. Moka and his people will say. And I would like to have a conversation with him. Bring it on.
All right, that would be good. Let's talk about governance. What chances are these opposition and the ruling party have in the next election? Many thanks, Ladan Saliu.
Thank you.
Felix Moka, thank you so much. But that's our show for tonight, everyone. Many thanks for watching. I'm Sean Okembale. God bless Nigeria.
I'm here at Chilenja Market in Lusaka, Zambia, and tons of food is thrown away every day.
Did you know that